Okay.
What led you, like from the beginning, walk me through. You are a mom. You are now also a full on entrepreneur who has started Lead Safe Mama. What brought you to create this?
So, that's the big question, right?
Sorry.
It's fine. So, and I created my documentary film to answer that question in depth, but the short answer is that in 2005, my children were acutely lead poisoned by the work of a painting contractor. So he used an open flame torch to burn the paint off the outside of my historic home. He told me that that was safe to do because the we were only working on the outside of the house, and we were and he said it was safe to stay inside while he was doing that because he wasn't working on the inside of our home. So then
Oh
I
my
stayed
god.
home with the kids, and Avi was 7 months old at the time. And I didn't think that anything was being done dangerously, even though I did like, I asked him, are you going to be using lead safe work practices? Do we know this is going to be safe? And this contractor who was very well regarded in the neighborhood and was working on multi-million-dollar homes. So I was like, okay, he can do our little, tiny house. That it's not tiny, but it was, it was the small house in the neighborhood, the $300,000 house in the $1 million home neighborhood. And I thought, okay, he'll do a good job. He wasn't like some fly by night contractor working out the back of a truck. He had many trucks. They all had his name on them. He had all these workers with their, with their logo, with his logo on their shirts and everything. And so I thought, okay, this guy's legitimate. And he was referred by other really fancy, houses in the neighborhood. People had used him. So by burning the paint off the outside of the house, it was a 1914 house. It was built between 1914 and 1917, and the lead contaminated fumes seeped in through the windows and the cracks, and my baby inhaled the fumes and became instantly acutely lead poisoned. But because we were white and middle income, the doctors refused to test us for lead poisoning because at the time, 2005, that's 19 years ago already. The myth that this is a low income minority problem and doesn't impact everyone was much more culturally ingrained, and that's what I've been working on for the last almost 20 years, is trying to get people to understand that this isn't everyone problem. This isn't just a low income problem. This isn't a minority problem. This is everyone who lives in a city, everyone who lives in an older home, everyone who eats packaged food, everyone who uses consumer goods that are mass manufactured. This is impacting everyone, and we need to address this as a comprehensive problem. But at the time, they were like, "Oh, you don't worry about it. Your kid doesn't have a fever. Don't there's no issue. So just keep him hydrated." And so then eventually, um, uh, 2 months later, my 3 year old, I both my kids got sick, and my baby and my 3 year old. My 3 year old was vomiting and had, sorry, there's children outside my window. Can you hear? Is that okay?
No, it's all good.
So my 3 year old started vomiting and having, and one morning he woke up with explosive diarrhea, like covered head to toe in shit. You can bleep that or whatever. And I was like, okay, I don't care if the doctor says there's nothing wrong with him. I don't care if the doctor say just keep him hydrated. I'm taking him in. You're going to test him for everything because I'm sick of cleaning up vomit and poop all over the place for 2 months when my kids were violently ill. Because the doctor just kept saying, they don't have a fever, they're fine. They don't have a fever, they're fine. I'm like, no, there's something wrong here. You have to find out what's wrong with them. And at that point, they tested AJ for everything. And that's when he came back positive for lead. And I said, test my baby. And they said, oh, your baby is only 9 months old. You don't need to test him. I'm like, are you kidding me? I want to know why my other kid tested positive. Why can't we test him to have a better sense of where this is coming from? See, because they both interact in the same environments, but one was solely breastfeeding and the other one was playing with toys. Maybe would help me pinpoint the source of exposure for AJ. And so they tested Avi, and he ended up. They called me that same day and said, you have to get out of your house immediately. Your baby Avi has acute lead poisoning, and you should leave with the clothes on your back. Don't take anything. Everything's probably contaminated. And I'm like, okay, but what should I do about this? And the doctor was like, I have no idea. I have no experience with this. And that's when I realized that the doctors didn't know, the public health department really didn't know anything beyond just like, here's a mop, clean your house better. And I'm like, no, 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 no. My kid has lead poisoning. What does this mean? How do I deal with this? And so that's what started me on this journey of finding the answers and then making those science-based answers available for other families so that they don't go through this 2 years of trying to sort out how to deal with this issue. It was like 2 years of trauma of dealing with my kids' lead poisoning following the incident in which they were poisoned. So I made a documentary film so there'd be a crash course for families whose kids were poisoned so that they wouldn't have to research all of the things. And the film interviews like lots of the top experts and scientists. And then I started taking on the science myself and doing X-ray fluorescence spectrometer testing of consumer goods. And then this year, the big thing that's new is we're doing laboratory testing of food and other ingested items like supplements, which is kind of really disrupting the industry. And the interesting thing is, a lot of other people do testing of foods, and I talked about the contamination of the food supply in the scene that I filmed in February of 2012. So I've been talking about this issue publicly, for 12 years now. And other people or other agencies who are doing this kind of testing food, aren't releasing the lab reports, and they're not telling the consumer the exact levels of the results of the testing. They're kind of synthesizing the data for the consumer, say like, oh, well, these are safer or this is better. And I'm like, no, no, no. You need to tell parents how much lead, how much mercury, how much cadmium, how much arsenic is in this thing, so the parent can do their own research and decide if they want to have that risk. One really interesting kind of example of that is what's happening this week. This month is the well, the cinnamon issue with the Consumer Reports. I don't know if you noticed that, but the Consumer Reports did a cinnamon report, and they tested all these different cinnamons, and they said these cinnamons are really dangerous. Don't have them. These are better, and these are the safest we found. That's not what they should be saying. They should say all of these cinnamons tested positive for unsafe levels of lead. You need to decide which ones you're comfortable eating. Instead, they're actually promoting through a very big mouthpiece, which is Consumer Reports magazine, that these lower levels of lead and cinnamon are acceptable, and they simply aren't. And that's just an example of kind of the greenwashing that's happening through news agencies and other outlets, kind of trying to digest and regurgitate the information for the consumer, when we're smart enough to read this science and understand it. We just need a little coaching through that, and we need to understand what the standards are, and then I can decide if I want to feed my kiddo lead contaminated cinnamon, or maybe skip the cinnamon, or find a cinnamon that doesn't have any lead. So that's what I'm trying to do: empower people to make informed choices based on their experience, their diet, the products they use, their aggregate exposure, and what they would like to eliminate, as opposed to making these decisions for people.
You're incredible, and I'm just blown away by podcast is done. Mic drop. Like, you're amazing. I just want to fill everyone in. So I know of Let's Safe Mama because the chemo club, they're amazing. And people would ask me for suggestions of, instead of using this toxic thing, what should I use instead? And Tamara was always so good to me. And I'm not an expert. And so I would reach out to Let's Safe Mom on the Instagram, and I would DM her. And you would always DM me back, truly, like instantly, and be like, this is what I recommend. I don't recommend this. So you have just always been incredible to me. And I'm so excited to talk to you. Like, I can't even tell you. Like, I'm like fangirling right now. So like if I am distracted, because I'm just like staring at you, just like, I can't believe this is happening right now. Why is lead so dangerous?
So there's a couple issues. That's a multi-part. The answer to that question is a multi-part answer. The biological scientific reason that lead is so dangerous is that lead biomimics calcium. So any part of the body that is using or storing calcium for development and growth, or for long-term health, or for repair, any part of the body that is exposed to lead while it's doing the process of growth or repair, will absorb that lead in the place of calcium. So we're talking the development of the brain, we're talking bones, teeth, soft tissue. I mean, calcium's integral to the body, right? And one of the main considerations is that calcium is a very key component for neurological processes. So it causes um, brain injury when lead is absorbed in the place of calcium by the brain. So that's like the main issue. But then we're also talking about disrupting the immune system, and also causing things like joint pain, arthritis, and any kind of immuno suppressive response that might be impacted from a non-functioning biological system that was contaminated with lead instead of calcium. It's causing so much harm. And when you look at all of the science in medical science done for the past century or so, none of that has been done in the absence of lead exposure. Lead exposure is impacting every health impairment out there because there hasn't been a control situation where there has been a population that hasn't had lead exposure. And then that gets to the other piece of it, is that lead exposure is the single most preventable and single most expensive environmental illness in the United States and the world today. So back in 2012, when I was working on my film, 2011 and 2012, Dr. Leonardo Chisande was with NYU Medical Center, and he published an environmental impact report showing the total cost of all environmental contaminants on children's health was 76.6 billion annually. And that was a conservative number, not taking into account other, that was just taking into account medical impacts.
Mm.
And of that 76.6 billion, we're talking about BPA and mercury and plastics and like all sorts of different environmental contaminants. Of that $76.6 billion in environmental impacts on health, 50.9 billion of that was lead. So yeah, two-thirds of the health impacts of our environment are still in this century caused by lead, when people think that lead exposure is a thing of the past. And that's where it gets super dangerous, because like the lead industry, and this is in my film, but the lead industry has made a really big concerted effort to make people think that lead poisoning is a thing of the past, that lead poisoning is not something we need to worry about, but it's more impactful than all of the other environmental contaminants combined, and about twice the impact of all of the other environmental contaminants combined. So, put together all, BPA and mercury, and I don't know, list the whole things, and the impact of all those things combined is half of the impact of lead today. So that's it's a huge thing. And then for your audience, because we're talking about chemo and
Mhm.
cancer, it's been really frustrating for me because lead has been listed as a possible carcinogen, and then in some circles as a known carcinogen. But it's really taken a long time for that distinction of lead being a known carcinogen to propagate into the popular culture and the medical understanding, and also into the training of doctors and that sort of thing. So doctors aren't looking for lead exposure as a possible link to cancer. And unfortunately, we have industry influence there. So, the American Cancer Society, for a long time, did not list lead as a possible or known carcinogen. And one of the reasons for that is because they were receiving funding from the lead industry. So it was suppressed as a factor because, oh, well, we're getting these huge grants from these companies that have direct ties to lead production, mining, refining, manufacturing, and selling. We have to like be chill about how we identify lead as a carcinogen. So it's at every step of the way, and I'm sure you realize that to some degree. I mean, I don't know, but there's political influence on our medical and health system. So
1000%. And that is why I have started this, because it's everywhere. The political influence is everywhere, and they are trying to politicize health and wellness and greenwashing. People don't believe it. Greenwashing is a real thing. And I tell this story on every podcast. I will never forget the first time I ever posted about citric acid.
oh
And not only did I get my Instagram shut down, I was shadow banned. It was insane. And that was my first citric acid, fake lemon. That was all. I'm just like, be careful. Don't be careful with citric acid. When I saw this censorship around that, I go, okay, this is beyond alive and well. Like, I can only imagine with the work that you do, like how it's monitored. Like, it's insane.
yeah, and well, just during the pandemic, during the height of the pandemic, the my work was censored repeatedly because they were centering all health related information. And then more recently, the links to my film that I've shared on Facebook over the last 10, 11 years have all been removed. I'm like, what? It makes no sense because I'm not fringe. The science I share is not fringe. I've been a
Exactly.
guest speaker at Stanford. I've collaborated with Consumer Reports magazine on a couple of pieces. I've been interviewed by every media outlet. I've won 2 awards from the federal government. So, as much as we hate the federal government, my work has been acknowledged by a consortium of public agencies, including the EPA, CDC, HUD, FDA, USDA. I forget what else, but anyway, like, my work is not fringe. I'm just pushing what is being articulated publicly about this subject. And I'm also challenging the status quo and challenging the lack of regulations that are continuing to poison families.
You're incredible. I live in San Francisco, right? And it's all old Victorian Edwardian homes. And when you're telling me that story about
Yeah.
how let's the thing of the past, the second you said that, it brought me back to a couple weeks ago. My husband and I, we are in the market right now. And looking at some homes in San Francisco. And the three houses we went to, this is just clicks with me. Within the first 5 to 10 minutes, the three different realtors all said to us separately, "Oh, don't worry, like you don't have to worry about lead with this house," without even it being prompted by
Yeah.
me, nor even like thinking about that.
Yeah,
So,
they do that.
but I'm curious, how did you before your own personal exposure to this lead and what your kids went through? Did you have any background information, or had you already were you well versed in lead before this? Like, how did you know to even ask those questions to the painter?
Well, I was already an environmental activist to a degree, not formally, not full time, like I am now. But, my life has changed. I was living in the Bay Area, actually. I lived in San Rafael. And when I was doing environmental activism stuff from the time I was little. I was born in 1969. So, I grew up with environmental activism, and my mother was a potter. And we were very low key in terms of our environmental impact as a family, and that was just choices we made, not to adhere to a philosophy just because it was the 60s, it was the 70s. You didn't buy plastic toys, and you ate non-processed foods. These were just things that we took for granted, whereas now you have to strive to achieve those considerations. So I lived when I was pregnant with my first son in 1995. I bought my first home in San Rafael. It was a townhouse, and I knew that asbestos was a concern because that place was built, I think it was built in 1976. So I had the asbestos in the ceiling tested. And before we moved in, I was pregnant. So before I moved in with my unborn baby, I made sure to have an asbestos remediation firm fully clean and remediate all and remove all of the asbestos from the ceiling of my apartment. And that was my first, construction related choices that I made on my own as a single person, about making sure that my home would be safer for my family. And, I knew about lead paint vaguely. It wasn't anywhere near the top of my radar. But I knew that, healthy homes were important, and we need to look for natural materials. And, but obviously I know a lot more about that now. And so then when we were painting our house, when the kids were poisoned,
Mhm.
I didn't think about the fact that there was lead on the house, but my neighbor said, "Hey, you need to hire." Oh no, actually, at one point the neighbor got mad because we had hired
They always do.
we hired someone to sand our garage door, and she said, "You can't do that. It's lead paint." And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense." And then when we were hiring contractors to repaint our house, we actually interviewed like 10 contractors, or I don't know, at least seven. I can't remember at this point, but a lot. And one of the contractors said, I will not touch this house because it is painted with lead paint, and you need to hire someone who's trained and certified in using lead safe work practices. And that was the very first time that I heard about lead safe work practices and that it was a contractor consideration for repainting an older home. It really hadn't occurred to me until then. And so I'm really thankful to that contractor. But then we went and hired a different contractor. We asked him the question. We said, "Are you certified? We understand we need to make sure that our contractor is certified in handling lead paint." And they said yes, they were, but they lied. That contractor lied. He wasn't certified. He failed the training, and he used unsafe practices and poisoned our kids. So among the things that I share is, if you are hiring a contractor, make sure you ask to see their certificate. Look and see when it expired. Look and see when they took the training, when it's due up for renewal. Make sure it hasn't expired. If you and also call like the Better Business Bureau or whoever you can call, like, to confirm that the company is an up and up company, and call those references when you're hiring someone to paint your house. But back to your question about San Francisco and realtors. Realtors, well, some are the exception and are doing a better job. I think it was 1991. There was a law proposed that would have required a lead hazard disclosure with an assessment and testing with the sale or transfer of ownership or transfer of residence, including renting of residential properties. The real estate situation, the main agency that lobbied against this new bill was the National Association of Realtors. They thought it would impact sales, and they didn't want to have to disclose test reports and require testing. They thought it would impact sales. So instead of actual useful data that would help homeowners and renters make sure their family is safe, now we have a one-page lead disclosure where realtors, like the realtors you talked about, encourage the sellers to check the don't know box about whether or not there's any lead in their home. And that's all they have to do. They just check don't know. Even though if they have a pre-1978 home, they probably have lead. And that don't know thing is a scam, and the realtors know it. And that's why they're trying to head it off at the pass by letting you know, oh, there's no lead concern, because they know that the seller's going to check the don't know box, and they don't want you to look into it any further than that.
So be honest. What are your thoughts if I were or someone were to move in a house that was built before the 1970s that says they did the testing, it's all clear, everything should be fine?
You can't trust it in all things. You can't trust anyone else's testing. You have to do the testing yourself. That's with food. That's with anybody that's making money off of selling you something. You can't trust their testing.
Say
Um,
that say that one more time because I'm gonna use that as our trailer clip. Say that one more time.
okay. Anyone that's making money off of selling you something, you cannot trust their testing. Their testing is influenced by their bottom line. So if they're making money off of testing something, a house, food, a consumer good, their testing is influenced fundamentally. So if a homeowner tells you that they've tested, or if the realtor tells you they've tested, you don't know the scope of that testing. You can ask to see the reports. They can. In my movie, we talk about this actually. There's a family whose kid was poisoned after the house passed inspection. So the house passed inspection, the family moved in, and then the kids were poisoned. And what we learned was that in Rochester, New York, it was common practice for landlords to open all the windows of the house, clean everything really thoroughly, and then do the testing. And then the minute those original lead painted windows are closed, a lead hazard is created that contaminates the entire home. And so they would actually set up the parameters of the testing they were doing to make sure it would pass testing, so that they could get the Section 8 tenants in there, and those families would then be poisoned. And that's just one kind of blatant example of how you can rig testing. And for example, another example, today we're talking about the prenatal vitamins, not the pre we're talking about the children's vitamins, the Haya vitamins. And Haya is saying, well, we test. Okay. Well, the test reports that Haya is sending out, they're outdated. The one I've seen is from 2023. They don't note a low threshold of detection. And Haya is saying that it's independent third party testing, but the report clearly shows that Haya is sending in the testing, the product to be tested at the lab. The minute the company is the one sending the product in to be tested, it's not independent, it's not third party, it's orchestrated and paid for by the corporation. They could do anything, not saying they would, but they could do anything to influence which product they send in to be tested that's not representative of the greater body of the product that they have. For independent third party testing to be truly independent, the product needs to be purchased off the shelf by someone who isn't affiliated with the company and sent into a lab that isn't affiliated with the company, and ideally sent in blind, where even the lab doesn't know what product they're testing. And that's what we've been doing with most of the food we've been testing. Anytime we can hide the identity of the product when we send it into the lab, we do. I mean, the thing we just sent in this week that you can't hide, for example, is Hershey bar. It says Hershey all over it. They're gonna know it's a Hershey bar, right? But most of the products are like powders and flours and other things, and they don't have the brand name emblazoned on the product. And so we can send those in blind, and that's what we've been doing to ensure that it's truly independent third party testing. And it's also funded by the Lead Safe Mama community. So there's no money coming in except for one really weird thing happened is Amara smoothie melts contributed in support of the testing of one of their products. But
That's
that was,
amazing.
well, it's interesting. It's interesting. It's like, are they trying to influence the test results? Are they trying to shed doubt on the test results?
Oh, interesting. Well, okay, and this is what I love about Let's Save Mama. Okay, so what is the actual date of conception of Let's Save Mama? Was it 2010?
Let's Save Mama is January 2018 officially, I think.
2018.
But I've been
Okay,
doing this for under different iterations prior to that.
totally. Explain to us, because every time I open up Instagram, boom, it's you with a brand new study of a certain product. How many products a week do you test, and how do you decide which products to test? Like, I find that so fascinating.
Yeah, I test what you tell me to test. The funny thing is, like, my kids are now 28, 22, 19, and 16. So I don't use baby products. I'm not eating all this junk food. It's not something that, so almost everything I test is something that readers have asked me to test. For the consumer goods, I have periods where I allow people to send things in for testing. So they actually send me boxes with their dishes or whatever that they got for their wedding or to test. And then sometimes like a family or an individual will call me in distress, and they'll say, I have this question, and I'll be really compelled by their story, and I'll buy that product to test. So a really good example of that was, I believe it was last year, a new bride was getting married, and she had registered at Williams Sonoma for these dishes that looked lovely, and she wanted to have for her wedding china. And then she thought, oh, I'm going to buy one of these so I can have it, so I can know what it's like before the wedding. So she bought it, and when she ordered it, there was no warning, but when she bought it, there was a big old sticker on it that said, warning lead. And the reason that that sticker was there was because the year before I had called out Williams Sonoma for having lead contaminated dishes, and they had not marked them anywhere. And so they responded by putting a big sticker. They didn't respond by removing the lead from their glazes. They responded by adding,
On you.
it was just crazy. Anyway, so this woman, not a mom yet, she was curious about her dishes and worried about why that was. So I went and bought a set of those Williams Sonoma dishes. It was kind of expensive, and I tested them, and yes, they had lead. And so that I do. I've been doing more and more recently, because then I can buy right from the manufacturer. I know the date of purchase. I'm following the chain of custody. And when we're doing this food testing, we also purchase everything directly, either from the manufacturer or from Amazon or from the grocery store shelves, so that it's an actual product that's out there that people are buying, as opposed to having the company send it or having a mom send me something that she had at her home. That way, there's no chance of contamination or influence. And so, with the food testing, which again is new since March of 2024, well, and back a bit. I started my first website in 2008, so I've been doing the public advocacy thing since 2007. And my first interview for the news was in 2007. I was interviewed for USA Today, and then 2008 I was on the Today Show. So it's been a long journey with a lot of iterations of my work, and this newest version of my work, Lead Safe Mama LLC, is the best method of doing all the things I've always done before, in a unique community collaborative small business model, where it's being run like a nonprofit, but it's not a nonprofit. So I'm working with my readership, and we have about 2 million plus readers on the website every year, and tens of thousands of followers on social media. I'm working with my readership to identify what they want tested. So with the food stuff that we've been doing, we decided to create a system where you can nominate a food, and if I get enough nominations for that food, I create a GoFundMe, and the GoFundMe covers the cost of buying the food, um, uh, covering the cost of sending it into a lab, the fees, and my helpers. I have about right now I have 5 helpers who help me with the writing and stuff, and so it covers those base costs, and I'm volunteering my time for the food testing. I mean, in the end, this business is almost self-supporting because we're making money through advertising and Amazon affiliate income and all of that that helps to cover the costs, in addition to the contributions that cover the cost of the testing. But we also have $270,000 in debt for the business based on our legal challenges that we've had to date over the last 8 years, 8.5 years. So it's not like a money making machine, which I think is kind of funny because some people challenge me and say you're just doing this for the money. I'm like, okay, I have no kitchen right now. No, my home is deconstructed because we can't afford to remodel the kitchen, but we didn't want to leave the lead painted boards in the kitchen, and $270,000 in debt. So nope, I'm not doing this for the money. But what I am hoping is that this business, Let's Save Mama LLC, will eventually be a self-sustaining business where we're generating enough money to pay me and my family, as well as to cover all of the costs of the work we do here. And also, just, I mean, I don't know if you want to include any of that, but part of it is I get paid for the consulting that I do. I do one-on-one consultations with families. I have ways that I'm earning a living, but the community collaborative of the food testing is much more run like a kind of a nonprofit model, even though it's not a nonprofit.
Well, that's I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to say, how do you respond to people who question the donations of money for things to be tested?
Well, I would go like, but no. I like I have it on every page related, and a link on the GoFundMe. Either direct budget, the exact budget of how we're spending the money is on every page. People
You are
are,
dedicated to transparency.
yeah, yeah.
That
I
you
always
can see that your core is
Yeah.
being transparent.
Yeah. And so while the food testing fundraising campaigns are covering those costs, the affiliate income of the business is covering other costs and covering the base costs of the business, including paying people that help, and covering legal fees and paying off the debt. So we're almost to almost to a sustainable business model. But it's really funny because there's people out there who challenge this and have like created like these false narratives, like that I'm it's just it's comical. We had lots of years of extreme poverty for my family, and we're finally getting out of that. But at the same time, we're still doing this with the intention of helping people and making sure there's transparency, like you said, and so the budgets for everything are publicly available, and my total earnings each year are published on the website as well, and our expenditures when we have big things coming up, like website redesign, or legal fees. I've written about those things as well, and what those are, so people know what all that is.
Well,
um
you credit because you run an LLC like you would a nonprofit. You are transparent. You are telling people this is where the funding's going, and
yeah,
you have nothing to hide. Like you are very open with me right now on this podcast about what you guys are going through right now.
yeah.
I find that very admirable.
Thank you. It's just a little bit hard because recently, with a lot of the attacks, there's a couple people out there pushing these narratives like, well, this is all about the money, and it's just kind of, like I said, it's comical, and frustrating that I have to defend this when it's all written out there. Like, how much do you think it costs to test something? Well, some people are saying you're spending too much money testing things. Well, the test kits cost 189. The lab testing costs 189 to $195 if you buy it, depending on whether or not you buy it on Amazon or directly on their site. And yeah, you might be able to do lab testing for less, but what I understand is if you do lab testing for less, you're not getting quality lab testing that would hold up in court. And so we're paying for the more expensive lab testing because we need to know that this will hold up in court, because that's the important thing. Like, if once these companies try and go after me, I need to be able to say, here's the receipts, here's the test, here's the agency that tested it. And again, that's why we're publishing all of this on the website, so that people can't challenge the results. Whereas there are other people doing some testing where there's a concern for cross contamination in their environment, and it's clear from the materials that they're putting out that there's a concern for cross contamination. And we make really careful choices and a concerted effort to make sure there is no cross contamination in our environment. And we always replicate our testing of consumer goods. We test things multiple times to confirm the results before publishing them, because if we can't replicate a profile of toxicants for a dish or a baby bottle, then we shouldn't publish it, because that's not legitimate. Like, one thing I have, I don't know if it's here, hold on one second. Well, there's a yes, so there's a pot up here, I'll show you, hold on a second.
Okay.
um i I have been people ask me about this a lot. I've been testing these all clad things,
I
and
was
I
gonna ask you about this. Oh my god, okay.
and I've tested several where I found traces of mercury using the XRF technology, and I haven't published that. I've mentioned it, but I haven't published the test results because I haven't been able to replicate them with a level of security. And my intention is to send this and some other similar pieces to the lab to have them see if they can, either with XRF or other technology, more accurate, more expensive equipment, determine if this is an anomaly or not. And so I don't have an article out there that says all clad has mercury. I instead have an article saying we found some traces and we're needing to confirm this. And people keep messaging me, why haven't you confirmed this yet? I'm like, because I don't have the money to send this to the lab to confirm it. And I don't want to have all clad attacking me for misrepresenting data. So, I'm not using Allclad. I'm no longer recommending Allclad because I think it needs further testing. And so that's the thing that needs to be said. This thing needs further testing. We don't know until it has further testing, and hold off on using those for now. Things like that, like being very careful and specific about language, is really important to me too.
People don't realize how important language is, truly, especially with how Sue happy everybody is. And when everyone's coming up against you, you have to be so careful with your select language. And I've learned that the hard way as well.
Oh yeah.
What is XRF?
XRF instrument is an X-ray fluorescence spectrometer. Where?
Is there any way you have one to show us?
Yeah, it's around the back. Hold on one second. Let me go get it.
Thank you.
Hold on, I got a bunch of junk on top of it because I haven't used it for a while.
Good.
Here we go. So this is an XRF instrument, and there's some that look like this that are different, and people don't understand the difference between the different instruments. They have the different types of instruments have the same housing. They physically have the same casing, but it's what's inside that's different. This is a non-radioactive source tube-based XRF instrument that's specifically and expressly designed for testing consumer goods for all sorts of metals: lead, mercury, cadmium, arsenic, cobalt, gold, aluminum, tin, all the things. So this instrument is suitable for using in the field and around people because it's designed for that. Has a very low, has almost no scatter. Basically, if you held it up to your face for 5 hours straight, that'd be less than one dental x-ray. And usually when you're using this across an 8-hour day, you might actually only have it activated for like 30 minutes. And there's no scatter off of the side. It's a very narrow band of scatter. If you have an MREM ring detector and you're using it, there will be no detectable radiation. Whereas there's other instruments that are used by home inspectors that have a radioactive source, and they're always emitting radiation, and so they require different regulatory restrictions and have different considerations. So the radioactive source instruments cost between 10 and 15,000 used, and this one costs about $35,000, or maybe sometimes you can find one used in the range of 22 to 28,000. The brand new version of this instrument, which is a lot lighter than this one, costs $55,000 new, and I would like to buy one. But I don't have the money for it. So luckily, yeah. Wait, I can't hear you. Did we just lose?
Oh, no. Can you hear me
Oh,
now?
yeah, I can now. Yeah.
That is that's crazy. So the
Yeah.
average consumer, so the normal person can purchase that. It's definitely expensive. Are there any alternatives that someone could use?
Not really. I mean, you have to be trained and certified to use that, and you have to register it with the state. I've got a bunch of different test kits back here. Let me see what I have. There aren't any test kits that are really useful for testing consumer goods for lead, although some test kits work on some consumer good. This one right here is the Lumetalix, and they are out of the Netherlands, and that's the one test kit that is useful for testing some consumer goods for lead. It comes with a spray, and then there's a flashlight, and you spray this stuff on something that might have lead, and then you shine the light, and if it glows green, then it's leaded. The problem with this is it doesn't work on all paints, it doesn't work on all substrates. It works on many and some. I have a bunch of videos on my YouTube channel showing it working and not working. So like I have this one cup, I think that's like 30% lead in the glaze, like 300,000 parts per million. And I sprayed it and it didn't work. And so it doesn't work on some glaze. It doesn't work on some brass. It doesn't work on some crystal. So you won't get a false positive with that. If you get a positive with the Lumetalix, it's a true positive, but you might get a false negative. And so unfortunately, there aren't any really good sources for doing home testing of consumer goods, which is why I created my website, which has over 4,000 articles with information and that you can look up. And we're just in the middle of or getting started on doing a website redesign to make the search bar a little more obvious and a little easier to use with a more of a global search function, so that people can more easily find their things. But like I say, go to the website. You can look at the website menu. There's a bunch of quick buttons like for Crate and Barrel or Mikasa or Pottery Barn, or all the different places, Williams Sonoma. Or you can just put those words in the search bar. Put Williams Sonoma in the search bar, and a bunch of the test results for Williams Sonoma products that I've tested will come up. So again, with 4,000, the problem is there's no other website with 4,000 pages that I'm aware of. I mean, there maybe is, like the EPA site or something, but with 4,000 pages, you have to kind of learn to use the website because it's like an encyclopedia.
Yeah.
And again, we're doing a revamp, and hopefully we're coming up with some uh, better user interface stuff that to make it easier for people to understand. But you do need to read. You need to read the things that are written, and you do need to like know what you're looking for, because when you're looking at an encyclopedia, you need to know what letter to look under, right? You need, well, and then you also need to know to try try different spellings, if you might have something spelled wrong, or use fewer words. And it's tricky because so many young people today, especially, they're used to having everything up front. They want all the data like presented in an Instagram post, and that's just simply not possible when you're presenting independent science.
Interesting. So when you do conduct this testing, so let's just for an example, actually, who's the company that you hate?
Who's the company I hate? Which one? Oh,
Yeah,
did I
if
say?
you had to choose one, because that'll be who's somebody that you hate. Like, which company do we need to like really boycott?
Oh, I have a list on my website, actually, of stores I won't shop. um, so hate companies. There's a few. I only hate people based on, or companies based on, their poor use of science. Um, excuse me. Um, so my list of stores not to shop at. Let me just have a sip of coffee. Sorry, and this is my lead-free coffee.
You're so cute.
Um, the the companies that I say don't shop at, because they consistently, persistently, historically, and currently produce and manufacture and sell lead contaminated products, are Tiffany and Company, Sur La Table, um, Williams Sonoma, Pottery Barn, which I think they're all owned by the same parent company at this point. I World Market is getting better, but historically has been poor. Pier One, I think, went out of business. They were bad. Um, and you know, as far as consumer goods go, those are my top. And the
Okay,
reasons
Tiffany's as the
to
example. A, that breaks my heart because you need to take them off. Um,
well, I was registered at Tiffany. Like, okay, I lived in the Bay Area. Like, there's a do you live in San Francisco proper?
yes,
Or? Okay,
in the
so it's a different. I mean, I moved to Portland. We escaped 22 years ago, but there's a different kind of perspective of living in the Bay Area where certain things you take for granted that maybe other people don't take for granted because the cost of living is so freaking high that you think, oh, well, you know, it's okay that I want to register for my wedding at Tiffany and Company. That might be extravagant, but at the same time, you know, everybody else is doing it. And, you know, it's just like you want to reward yourself because you work so hard to even keep your head above water there. So
totally.
I registered for my wedding at Tiffany and Company when I was married to my ex-husband. We lived in San Rafael.
Mhm.
And I had, you know, this amazing china that was like Frank Lloyd Wright designed gold. I just loved it. It was like I was
Oh,
so
I died
proud.
for that.
Beautiful stuff, right? And so then and then I had that after my kids were poisoned and I tested it. It was positive for high level of lead. And then Tiffany like moved their way up my shit list. If you want to bleep me, you can.
Yes.
But they moved their way up when I went to visit a family in the Bay Area, and they had twins who they had, I believe, well, I'm not sure if they're twins. Anyway, they had two little kids who had piggy banks, and the piggy banks were from Tiffany's. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And I tested it, and it was positive for like 20,000 parts per million lead. And this was after the new legislation was in place when items intended for use for children by children need to test positive for no more than 90 parts per million lead in the paint glaze or coating. And these again were 20,000, more than 20,000 parts per million lead. And they were piggy banks from Tiffany that I think cost something like $300. And so I communicated with Tiffany and I said, these are illegal. These are piggy banks manufactured for use by children. You must fix this and have a recall. Tiffany responded by saying, these are not intended for use by children. I'm like, what? It's a piggy bank. Why? It's a piggy bank shaped like an elephant. How is that not intended for use by children? They're like, it's
Sold in the kids department of
here.
Tiffany's. Yes.
So
Yes.
so that was their initial response, and then years later I had the opportunity to test the newer versions of these same exact products, and they in fact removed the lead from the glaze of those products, which was amazing.
That's
So
huge.
they didn't do any, like, they didn't make any public notice about it. They never did a recall. um but they fixed the problem. And then because of the new legislation passed in 2008, the Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act of 2008, that became fully enforceable in 2011. They did start manufacturing children's dishes that are lead free, but they still manufacture dishware that has lead in some of the decorative elements. They still manufacture leaded crystal and sell it like it's not a problem. And if they have lead free crystal, which I think they do have some lead free crystal options, those have high levels of antimony, which is also a carcinogen. And like that's a big thing since, you know, we're talking cancer here. Um, these industries replace one toxicant with another. And the big thing is where lead has been replaced with antimony. So you might buy something that says, oh, this is lead free. Oh, that must mean it's safer. Well, antimony was added to the list of known carcinogens in December of 2021 as a probable concern for the consumer. Prior to that, it was only listed as a concern for people with industrial exposures. But I'm finding antimony in flame retardants on your sofa, in traces in your fleece blankets and your pillows, if you have polyfill pillows or anything with polyfill in it, polyfill quilts. All at levels that are considered legal in the state of California. But if they're in a little bit of everything in your house, it can get into your body, into your dust, and be absorbed. Yeah, and so then it's also in every electrical cord that might be a fire hazard. So, um, computer electrical cords, you know, the power supply for your laptop is not considered a fire hazard. So those tend to not have antimony. But your mixer on your countertop and your instant pot and anything like that, that's an appliance, your toaster oven, all have antimony instead of lead. And the older ones used to have lead in the electrical cords. Your lamps, your Christmas trees, things like that. So you know, the industry has replaced one concerning chemical with another and done it quietly, and that's also super. I forget where we were with that question.
So when we're testing a Tiffany product, or if you're testing a brand's product and it shows it's completely positive for lead, what is like how do you what's best practice? Do you email the company first saying, "Hey, I detected this lead. You have 5 days to respond to me, otherwise I'm going to let the Lead Safe Mama group know."
I
How does
don't
this
know. The
work?
company should know. I don't. People say, "Oh, that would be nice if you did that," and I'm like, "Yeah, I don't think so." For me, as an activist, it's more important that you know, that the moms know, that the consumer knows. The company should already know what they have in their products, and so I let them know at the same time. So the way it works is either I message the company with the test results, or in most cases, I publish the test results, and then by the time I get around to the, oh, I'm going to message the company, I already heard back from readers that they already messaged the company for me. And yeah, it's great. It's That's why this is a community collaborative effort. I couldn't possibly do all this on my own. I don't yet have any full-time staff. I have a bunch of
Mhm.
part-time people helping me. We're hopefully going to change that in the coming year. But, because I can't do all this on my own, I rely on the consumers, you, the people who send me these things to test, the people who ask me to test these things, to be the ones to follow up with the company. And actually, that's better because if you're looking at the potential for legal action, I haven't been harmed by these things, but you have. If you wanted me to test the Haya vitamins and you found out they tested positive for lead and you bought them because the company said that they were lead free or they tested for metals and you assumed that that meant that they were lead free, you're the one who's harmed, not me. I just sent them into the lab. So it's actually better that those communications come from the consumers who are impacted. And it's fun because, like, I don't know, I haven't looked online, obviously, since we've been on here. Let me just check. If I go on Instagram right now, this vitamin thing that we just published today, it's got like 250 likes, 192 comments on one, 194 likes, and 79 comments on another. And most of those comments are tagging the company. So they
Do you
can't
get
say they don't.
scared? Do you get scared calling these companies out?
Rarely. Sometimes I get a little nervous when they challenge me. It's just like human nature. And then I carefully read over their statement and I like make sure that what they've alleged is already addressed in the article that I've written, and I reread the article I've written and make sure there isn't anything miswritten, and then I'm usually okay. No, I'm good. Like with this Haya vitamin article, my headline, very carefully chosen, was Haya Kids Daily Multivitamins Test Positive for Lead, Cadmium, and Arsenic. I didn't say Haya Kids Daily Multivitamin Test Positive for an unsafe level of lead, cadmium, and arsenic. I just said that it tests positive. And then in the article, I explained that federal agencies agree that there's no safe level of lead exposure. So while there might not be an industry standard for lead in children's vitamins because they're not testing appropriately and the food standards haven't yet been made enforceable, the fact that they are positive for anything is a problem regardless of the fact that there's no law. And so then that's why I need to have the article that explains all the details. But there's nothing alarmist. That's the other thing, is like a lot of people who hate me, I don't know, because that I tested something they loved and it was bad. They're like, your headlines are alarmist, and I'm like, it's not alarmist to say Haya Kids Daily Multivitamins test positive for lead, cadmium, and arsenic. It's just fact. There's
People are
no
so
alarm there.
people are so dumb. Honestly, people are so dumb.
Yeah.
Like, you must think that all the time. Okay, have any major company CEOs personally have reached out to you?
Yes, not major, minor companies, small companies, a bunch of companies, like, they've threatened me, and then I
With what?
publish.
With defamation? Like, what do they threaten you with?
Yeah, they say that I have to take down my science, and
What do
I
you
I
say?
I respond and I say, "No, it's science," and then I always publish their response because and people are like,
What I
"That's
love
rude."
about you, you're a badass, Tamara, you're a badass.
Yeah. Well, my husband's concerned now that with the food stuff, that I'm going to get attacked by food industry because, again, we're disrupting the food industry. We're disrupting the narrative about the concern for toxicants in foods by publishing actual test reports with the actual levels of the toxicants in these foods. So, that's my husband's concerned that I'm putting a target on my back for that, because we already went through this once where I was illegally arrested for crimes I didn't commit because of false accusations, and we don't know where they came from because it was an anonymous complaint and it's protected by the Freedom of Information Act regs or whatever. So we've already been through a round of these attacks, and it's possible that it could happen again. But again, now that I have an LLC, it's a little bit more protected in terms of, and that I'm always very clear and focused on the science I share. It's more protected as well.
So
Then,
let me ask you then, with you experiencing this, what about your freedom of speech?
I mean, yeah, I talk about everything now. So, I mean, when my kids were poisoned, I signed a non-disclosure saying that I would not mention the name of the contractor who poisoned my kids. But I made sure the non-disclosures did not say that I couldn't talk about the issue. And the settlement that we got, ironically, was for $40,000, which was exactly the amount of the bill from the lawyer. So, um, it's like there's no benefit in getting engaged in legal stuff, but it happens, and that's why I have like this $270,000 in debt that I'm trying to pay off, because of these legal attacks. And that's again why it's so important to protect yourself when you do this kind of work, because and make sure you everything you say is will hold up in court. Everything you say is unassailable and it's based in science, non-reactive. Every now and then I'll be a little bit more emotional about something, like with the Bindle bottles, which I got recalled. We've gotten several products recalled. And it's really difficult to get products recalled from the Consumer Product Safety Commission. I've been trying to get these baby bottles recalled, and they still won't do it. But all of these different lead painted baby bottles. But with the Bindle bottle, I was like, Houston, we have a problem. And I was a little bit snarky in the letter I wrote to the guy, because the guy's name was Houston, and and this thing was on Oprah's favorite things list, and it was a water bottle with a food storage component that he originally designed as a way to store pot and paraphernalia. So like the original marketing for this was that this compartment was scent proof, so if you got stopped by the cops and you're on a hike in the Marin Hills or whatever, you wouldn't they wouldn't notice that you have pot on you. And then but
That's
then they started marketing as a place to store cookies and a place to store dog biscuits, but there was an open available bit of lead. And so if you're on a hike and you're with your water bottle, I mean, I've got a million water bottles here. I got this one. I haven't tested and reported on this one yet, but I bought this one because it's also on Oprah's favorite things list and also has lead. Um,
corsical.
yeah, so these have lead, but anyway, just pretend. So you're on a hike with your water bottle, and there's food in the compartment, and it's as you're walking, this is shaking up and down against the leaded ceiling dot on the bottom, with these Bindle bottles, and you were like actually kind of like doing a mix up while you're evenly distributing lead all over the food that was in the bottom compartment. It was egregious. It was a huge problem, and I'm really glad it was recalled. That was with some help from Consumer Reports to amplify my voice in that concern. They took credit for it initially, but
Course
they do that. People do
of water bottles.
that.
I have to thank you because Stanley Gate.
Yeah,
So I, it was through you I learned that like Stanley cups have lead in it, and that all these dumb mommy bloggers who are out there carrying their 7 different Stanleys, shoving them down people's throats. Buy the link,
yeah,
contaminated, right? When I
yeah.
posted about that, the pushback I got on these stupid Stanley cups would blow your mind.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I'm aware.
So I have a question about, and this is what a lot of people ask me is, okay, like I need a water bottle. I am a mom. I've got these kids. I need something like I need a clean, healthy water bottle. What is one that you recommend if we can't have, because Stanley has tested positive for lead?
Yeah, so the two brands that have tested negative for lead consistently for the last 10 plus years, Awala and Hydro Flask. Hydro Flask used to have lead, and I called them out on it back in like 2011, and they fixed the problem.
Okay.
And then they got written up in like Forbes magazine or something, that they were like, oh, what an amazing company they were to have identified the fact that they had lead and to fix it, and that they didn't give any credit for that. But whatever, you just keep going. It'd be nice. The thing is, people don't understand that I am not pissy about not getting credit just for the sake of it, but when these companies give credit where credit's due, and when they thank me publicly, when they thank Let's Safe Mama LLC publicly for our work, that gives us the credentials of legitimacy. And by not acknowledging that we were the ones who discovered this problem and that we were the ones who prompted them to fix the problem, they strip us of our legitimacy. And that happens constantly. Especially I get a little bit on my feminism side, but in this very male dominated world, men take credit for the work of women, especially women doing science, and that also happens constantly. So,
Oh,
frustrating, but
beyond, beyond. What are your thoughts on, or have you experienced one of the, I guess a little pushback I got on Hydro Flask is that I think they said that they're fully made in the USA and they're not.
no, yeah, no, they didn't say that. I mean, they're USA make the USA company, and they're made in China. They're all made in China. They're all made in China.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on that? Do we feel like because they're made in China, do you see that more products actually have lead in them or no, it doesn't
No,
matter?
no, 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 that's a myth.
Okay.
Actually, most of the products being imported from China are being very carefully watched. The companies that are manufacturing products in China where they're being sold directly from China to the consumer, like through Temu or Sheen or whatever that is, Shine, I don't know how to pronounce it, but those companies you have to be careful about. Anything where you get like a package shipped from China, be concerned. But American companies manufacturing products in China go through strict regulations for testing and export, and they are very less likely to be concerning, even less likely to be concerning than products made in the USA that don't go through the import reviews. Like some of these made in the USA products, they're toxic and they're made here, so no one's reviewing them because they're not coming in through a port. Whereas stuff coming in through the port in Washington State, especially, they test everything that's coming in through there. They have XRF instruments, and they're very thorough. So, I think in a way, I don't want to support made in China, and I don't want to diss made in America. I like made in America companies that are doing the right thing, but I
Totally.
think you have to be always a little bit wary, especially of smaller manufacturers, and ask them for their testing, and ask to see their reports if they're compliant, especially if they're making children's products or foods or whatever like that. So
Okay. That was really helpful. Thank you for clearing that up. So, for a reusable water cup, you recommend a wallet or hydro flask.
yes.
What do you recommend? What is Let's Safe's Mama's favorite cooking pan? What cookware should people do you approve of?
So the company I really liked is not manufacturing in the United States anymore.
Okay.
It was a really cool company based in Australia, and then they set up a plant in the United States, and they were selling and manufacturing here, but it was too expensive because their products are so awesome, because they're so high quality, and they couldn't keep it up. They are still selling products shipped from Australia, and the reason I like them, it's called Solid Technics. The
Solid
reason,
techniques. Okay.
yeah, the reason I like them is because they are one piece of material. They don't have like on this going back to this all clad, they don't have a handle that's a separate piece. They don't have these little pieces
Nut.
holding things on. All of these different pieces are introductions of possible contamination, and so um, it, you know having something made of one piece of material. They have this really neat process where they put the material on the mold, and they press it down, and the handle is part of the a pan, and there's no attachment points or anything. So Solid Technics is a great company, and they're out of Australia, and if you can spring for it or ask someone to buy you a present from them, I would do that. Both their stainless steel and their iron. It's not cast iron, it's pressed iron. um and I've got test sets of examples of what their toxicant profile is. The other thing to note is they sell their stainless steel product as nickel free, noni. It's called NONI stainless steel, but for everyone to know, noni stainless steel, nickel free stainless steel is not nickel free. Nickel free stainless steel legally can have up to 2,500 parts per million nickel, and the test results for the Solid Technics pans are consistent with that. So they do have traces of nickel. There are some pans at IKEA that are truly nickel free. I don't know which ones specifically, but maybe they have it in the labeling, so you can look at an IKEA. On the IKEA pans, usually it's just the internal part of the pan that is nickel free or low nickel. So if you're looking for that, which is, again, nickel's a carcinogen. So you want to be looking for that. For your audience, I think it's important that everyone gets a urine test, a 24-hour urine test, or a blood test for metals. And if any of the things, the readings of that test are high, that they consider looking for those metals in their environment. So they test positive for nickel, maybe eliminate the stainless steel for a while and add in more glass and cast iron. If they test positive for antimony, make sure there are no synthetic fibers in their home. Get rid of polyfill items, get natural pillows and blankets, get organic cotton blanket. I just got, oh my goodness, I'm not, this is a shameless plug because I love,
Maybe
I love Naturepedic, and because they're an amazing company founded by a guy who's totally focused on the science. And I just got their linen sheets, organic linen sheets, and
they're amazing.
they're amazing.
Okay.
They're expensive. They're $600. But the funny thing is, I talked to my husband, like, back when we lived in the Bay Area, and we had just met on our first date. Well, not our first date. The first time I slept at his house, which is like our fourth date. Um, anyway, I said to him, I said, "Hey, I bet you this is the only pair of sheets you own." And he like took that as a challenge, and he went out to Macy's and he bought 3 pair of sheets, and they were $1,000 a set because he had money, because he worked in Silicon Valley, and he was in tech. So he spent $1,000 a set on these sheets, very fancy, high
Um, he was
sets,
trying to impress you.
trying to
He
impress.
was trying to impress you.
And it worked. We got married a month later, so that worked. So
Oh my god!
yeah.
Tamara.
But anyway, so it's been a very long time since I've had $600 sheets, and I think that, you want what's touching your naked body to be the cleanest possible. So, like, these organic sheets from Naturepedic are great, but you can also buy organic cotton sheets from Target for like $35. So, you don't have to splurge. Although I'm really excited about these linen sheets.
Oh, I'm excited for you. Oh my god. If you like, if I need, please let me know. Because I also love Naturepedic. I think it's a great company.
Yeah.
I just have to say, I admire you so much because I don't know, because obviously I'm not you, but I can only imagine the tenacity and the self-encouragement you have to give yourself every single day to do what you do. And I just want to thank you because I have a feeling this is probably a very thankless job because you have truly transformed lives. You have made companies change their products, make them accountable, even though you don't get recognition for that from them. You are a mover and a shaker, and it's so impressive. The other thing I want to tell you, your skin is so gorgeous. And I guarantee that's probably because you are fully lead free. Like, if anyone were to be convinced to go lead free, just look at Tamara's skin on the video. Like, she is stunning, like, stunning.
It's so funny too, because like, I don't, like, people say, well, what personal care products do you use? Well, none. And I think, that's a privilege. I'm privileged somehow that I don't
Yeah.
do, I didn't ever have acne as a child or whatever, I was very lucky in that way. But it's a comment I get a lot, and it's kind of interesting for you to bring the lead consideration into it, because yeah, I have a thyroid disorder, so I am overweight, and I'm aware of that, and that's partly because I can't lose weight because of my metabolism's all messed up, and I don't know if that's from, why that is. So we're still looking
Yeah.
into that. I've been looking into that for 25 years, and
Yeah.
but I do live a really healthy lifestyle, and I eat a really low tox diet because of what I know. I mean, since we started doing this food testing, my kids are like, "Mom, we can't buy anything in the grocery store," and I'm like, yeah, that's true. But, we didn't really buy many of those snacks very often anyway. So it's not like a huge sacrifice. We really focus eating whole foods. And for me, again, it's a privilege, but I don't use any personal care products. I'm friendly with someone who owns a personal care line, and she gave me all of her things. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with any of this stuff, you know. So I think that if you are in a position where you don't have to wear makeup, and you can get away with, I mean, some people in certain jobs want to wear makeup, or like, I guess if I was wearing eyeliner, maybe my eyes wouldn't be so squinty, or if I would, put my glasses on. But I think that we really need to look at our toxicant exposure through our skin, as a primary pathway, even though a lot of the science is saying skin transdermal absorption is not a concern. I started kind of thinking about this inquiry back when I lived in Marin, and that was, 30 years ago. And everyone was getting breast cancer. All these women in their 40s were getting breast cancer. And Marin was like the breast cancer
Hotspot.
center of the world. And I'm like, what the hell? What's different about Marin than anywhere else? And in my personal experience, what was different, people were wearing makeup every day. People were wearing deodorant and perfume every day. It was all the stuff that they were putting on their skin to be part of society. And I really think that, I mean, I know that's since in the last 30 years has been studied a bit, but I think that we really don't look at that as a source of exposure. And for my mother, who died of cancer in 2016, she used to dye her hair on a regular basis, and that was her thing. It was always a different color: red, orange, burgundy, purple. I don't know, but I really think that contributed to her cancer, and the fact that it compromised her immune system to the degree that her cancer was led to kill her. I mean, she was a farmer at the San Francisco Farmers Market. You probably have some of our honey in your cupboard right now. It's Marshall's Farm Honey. I don't know if you go to the farmers market in San Francisco.
God, no way.
Yeah. So, if anyone lived an organic food lifestyle, my mom did. My mom was a representative of like organic living. She actually was nominated to go to Italy to represent the United States at the Slow Food Conference a while ago. And she ate all natural, all local, all organic food all the time, and yet she died of this really aggressive cancer. And I can't help but think that a lot of the personal care products had something to do with it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm nervous about because I feel like, and this is a lot of discourse and messages that I receive is that like trying to go fully non-toxic, trying to live an organic free life, like it's a lot for people and it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I trust me, I get that. And what I say is try to do everything in moderation. So when your toxic dishwasher cleanser is out, go buy the non-toxic one and start slowly introducing things like that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on what I'm telling people? Is it
That is
correct?
that's right.
And
It I think it doesn't have to be complicated if you don't make it complicated. Like for us, we always have organic apples in the house. Like there's never a day where we don't have 5 or 6 organic apples in the fridge. And that way the kids are more likely to reach for an apple. And we know that the kids like broccoli and cucumbers. And so we always have those available. So we're less likely to feed them some other snack. We know that they like, I don't know, I feel like I can't say anything because I haven't tested pumpkin seeds, but I haven't tested peanut butter yet. But we know we always, we had, like I shared a picture yesterday of I made a snack for Charlie, sliced apple with peanut butter. Some people are concerned about the mold in peanut butter. That's not a concern that I have, given the peanut butters we buy, and maybe I should have that concern, but I don't. If you make these choices, you only have to make them once. Like if you choose that non-toxic dishwashing detergent, you only have to make that choice once. I tell people, especially young moms, the amount of energy that you put into choosing your car seat should be the same amount of energy you put into choosing each of the products you bring into your home. So you're putting all this energy, everyone is, researching that best car seat, and you only have to make that choice once. Well, the same is for your toothpaste. And then once you've made that choice, that's it. That's your toothpaste until they stop selling it, right? And I think that that's the same for, like, okay, for us, we're not eating chocolate. Because we made that choice. And so what are we doing instead? Well, we're finding other things. You don't need to eat chocolate. And if we decide we're going to have some chocolate, we'll have like chocolate ice cream or chocolate cake, where the chocolate is the flavor of the thing, not the thing itself, because it's less likely to be toxic than eating a chocolate bar, which is always going to be toxic. So, and the other thing that I think is the hardest thing is getting away from the packaged products. And I think that if I had said this to myself, if I went back in time 10 years ago when Charlie, my 16-year-old, was, he would get hangry. I had to have him snacks at school. He had to have packaged snacks. I'm like, what do I do? So I bought him a lot of bars and snacks so that I could give them to the teacher so he could constantly eat. Cause he's like, he's 6'2". He's been 6'2" for he's 16 and 6'2". And so he needed, and he also has a mental illness diagnosis. So he needed to constantly eat to manage his, to stabilize his mood. And so for Charlie, um, I think that that would have been difficult to not have the snacks, but that's why right now we're trying to test more snacks. And then my son Avi, who just started college, he's the one with the brain injury. He's 19 now. He has
Mhm.
a permanent brain injury from being acutely lead poisoned as a baby. He he's having trouble with his calorie management because he's also vegan and sugar free. So, it's people like, how do you do vegan, sugar free, lead free? We didn't do it all at once. We like layered these things on one at a time. And Avi's
Yeah.
choice to be vegan is his own. Uh, I'm not vegan, although we keep a vegan home, but I eat non-vegan when I eat out. And so,
Mhm.
so for Avi, since March of doing all this testing and testing these bars, like the Go Macro bars were one of his favorite bars, but they test positive for lead, cadmium, and arsenic. And I'm like, I can't feed these to my lead poisoned kid now. So now I just we found two snacks that were non-detect for toxicants. These pure organic fruit bars that they sell at Costco, and then the Go Squeeze apple juice pack, not apple juice, applesauce packets, the organic ones. So both of those tested non-detect in the cinnamon flavor and in the just the plain flavor. So I shipped him a couple of cases of those at college. They're not the most nutritious thing, but they're quick calories if he needs to grab a bar between classes.
Right, hold them over.
Yeah. And so, make those choices when you can. Like Avi just called me this morning and said, "Mom, I'm going to the store. What should I buy?" He needs a lot of support, and I'm like, "Okay, buy some apples so you have them in your fridge at college." And he's, relying on Amy's organic burritos. Now I haven't tested those, but they've got beans and rice and it's all organic. Well, they have rice, so they probably have some arsenic. So he limits his rice intake in general, but making a few exceptions here and there isn't going to necessarily kill them, especially as we're trying to find out what the safer choices for fast foods are. Like fast, when I say fast food, I mean, like, I don't mean fast food. I mean, like, things you can grab quickly. And so
Totally.
for us as a family, that means like always having nuts around, like a big jar of each of the different kinds of nuts. And we don't use sunflower seeds because of the toxicant profile of sunflower seeds. And we're going to be doing more testing of seeds and nuts in the coming months. So we'll have a
Well,
better
I'm so
sense.
excited for that. I'm excited for your nut testing, and I'm excited, I mean, I'm dreading it, but your supplement testing and your vitamin testing, because I take vitamins and supplements, Tamara, every day, and I'm so scared to know I haven't poisoned myself. It's gonna be awful.
Yeah, it's a problem because the industry is relatively unregulated, and somebody I know in the supplement industry got mad at me for saying that and hasn't really spoken to me since I said that to him. But they're regulated, but most supplement companies test down to a low threshold of detection of either 1 part per million or 5 parts per million. 5 parts per million is 5,000 parts per billion, and food is toxic in the single and double a digit parts per billion when you're talking about heavy metals. And there's no safe level of lead exposure. So, going back to these Haya vitamins that we published about today, the Haya vitamins, let me see, they tested positive for lead and cadmium, let me just pull it up. Hold on. And arsenic. And um, the lead level was 30 parts per billion. And Haya's response is, well, we can't make it cleaner than that. It's the cleanest they are. And I'm like, no, that's not true, because the Smarty Pants vitamin tested for 6 parts per billion, 6.54 parts per billion. So even though the Smarty Pants has lead, which I'm not happy about, it's much lower level of lead than the Haya. So you have a choice there. If you're
Yeah.
gonna, you have to do a multivitamin for your kids, which I can understand if you feel like you have to because you can't seem to get them to eat a balanced diet. Then
Mhm.
you as an informed consumer will choose those Smarty Pants over the Haya. Although I don't recommend either. I recommend trying to do it with the diet if you can. And so it's just about making informed choices one at a time. And I do think that, I, I mean, in a perfect world, if we went back like 100 years or 200 years, everyone would be making food themselves fresh, and their lives wouldn't be as chaotic and hectic and run by social media and television and all the other media sources that we have to contend with that sap our time. And I think that to the degree. that we can do that, we should. I've just started following Ballerina Farm. I don't know if you know them.
Best. I'm
I I heard about it and I'm like, huh. Whenever I see an account like that that gets like promoted on some story, I'm like, I
mhm.
want to follow their account to see where I can find lead at their house. So I'm like, I watch her videos and I'm like, oh, that has lead, that has lead, that has. She's got all sorts of sources of lead in her kitchen.
Oh, I bet she would love to know that because
I
she
mean,
is like she's amazing. I'm obsessed with her. I'm obsessed with her family. Um, what she stands for is incredible. Oh my gosh, I hope you can connect with her.
yeah, I'd
That'd
like
be
to
so
connect with her
exciting.
because she's got a big platform and I love what she's doing, except for the lead part. So
Ballerina Farm girlfriend, we want Let's Say Mama wants to help.
yeah, and I could like go to her
We'll
house. I could go to her house and test all her things for lead, and then she would be able to share that. And like I her casserole dishes and her mixing bowls and her stovetop pots and pans. I've noticed a lot of her things have lead. But that's the point is she's doing everything she can to make everything from scratch, and I love seeing those things. I really like Food Babe, in spite of the fact that she's also controversial. um, and I like because she gives recipes that are kind of easy, that are whole food based. And I don't like that she's selling packaged products. I think that if I were her, I would have stayed away from that. But whatever. But I do like that she gives easy recipes out of whole foods that people can follow. And then another person, Mama Bear something or other. Oh gosh, I get confused with everybody's names, but there's another
No.
girl. Her name. Let me find out. Let's see if I can find her. But she has like fun. She's got I think 4 kids now, or three. Let me just see if I can find her. Mama, I think it's Mama Bear something. Oh gosh, everybody has similar name. Non toxic Mama Bear, Jenna Johnson. Do you know her?
Oh, no, non-toxic mama bear. I need to look her
Okay.
up. Okay.
She has some stuff I disagree with, and she and
Okay.
I could talk about that. But she, and she's recommending different supplements and stuff, which I disagree with. But she also
Mhm.
has some fun, easy, like, oh, this is how I feed my kids. These are easy recipes and things like that. So I think finding people that inspire you that have easy things to make out of whole foods at home uh, is really helpful, and also simplifying what you're feeding your family. Um, I try to cook as little as possible. Whole raw foods are easy to do. Sliced vegetables, fresh raw vegetables, and then sliced fresh fruit and nuts and seeds, and then we'll have maybe one meal or we'll go out for a meal as a family. So
Of all the years we've been doing this, do you ever sit back and are just like proud of yourself?
I'm like, I was going to say, do you ever sit back and say, okay, I've had enough?
Yeah, like, "Hey, I'm exhausted." I get that. You must be
I
exhausted.
am. Yeah, no. I'm proud of the community. I'm really proud of all the people, and it's 95% women, who believe in science, take this to heart, use this information to make informed decisions for their family, and then share that information with others. I'm really proud of the way the movement's growing, which was always the intention to grow a movement where people rely on science and make science based informed decisions for their families. And I think that's been happening more and more recently. And it's interesting because it's happening in spite of the controversy and in spite of the pushback and in spite of the political differences. And I think that's really important too.
And that's how you know, like, the work that you're doing is needed.
Yeah.
Where do you hope to see Let's Save Mama 10 years from now?
Well, I'm I've been having a I was just diagnosed with tennis elbow from holding the instrument. So I've got
Oh,
repetitive strain from holding the
poor
instrument.
thing.
So what I've been trying to do is get more people on my team to help me
Mhm.
with the work so that I'm not doing the physical work as much and I can focus on my own health and my
Mhm.
family's health and well-being, and but also get more people on the team so we can expand the impact of the work we're doing. So we have some pretty big projects coming up that I can't really talk about.
Okay.
But you'll see them when they launch. I'm
I'm
thinking,
so excited.
yeah.
Talk about a tease.
I have a couple new people involved that are helping um financially to grow this movement, and that is very exciting because it's always been about a lack of resources, which is again, I'm like, I don't want you to focus on the finances of my business, but whatever you want to do, I don't care. But my business has always revolved around this like lack of resources. How can we do all that we're doing with almost nothing? How can
Mhm.
we keep sharing this information and engage in more science? Well, we got into the food testing because the food testing company donated food testing. And then people were so excited about it that I'm like, okay, how can we raise money to do this? Even though they're donating still 8 tests a month. How can we do more than 8 tests? Well, right now we're testing 60 foods this month. And we just started this in March. So March, April, May, June, July, August, September. 7 months in, we went from testing 6 foods the first month to testing 60 foods this month, which is amazing. And it's probably going to end
Amazing.
up being like 75 foods by the end of the month that are at the lab. But that's because of the community collaborative nature and the fact that the lab is still donating to 8 tests a month, which is really great. The lab is donating so we can test. This month we're testing Halloween candy kind of things, both natural and non-natural alternatives. So that's really great. And 10 years from now, I'm hoping that this movement will be self-sustaining where I can maybe even let it go. It'll be a big enough organization that other people can be on board and someone else can take over. And for me personally, I get to keep writing about pushing the boundaries and pushing to hold corporations accountable because that's what I like. Is I like writing. I'm a writer.
Yeah.
I
And
also
you did beautifully.
Thank you. I also consider myself an artist. I mean, I'm a documentary filmmaker. I'd like to make some more films. So
Mhm.
growing the movement to the point where we have the funding where we can make some additional films. I'd love to make a film about the food considerations. I mean, there's been a lot of food films, but I think I have a new one in all of this data. I've been
Mhm.
invited to participate in a television show about this, so a docu series. So that's exciting. I think there's so many opportunities, and I just want to be alive to help manifest all of this, getting all this information out into the world and normalizing this concern to the point where people don't think it's fringe and people aren't attacking it the way they attack it right now. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that for me personally, I don't think I'm going to stop. I think it's just kind of growing, and wherever you all push me, I'll keep doing that. One of the things that I've been doing over the years too is I've been collecting the things that people send me. If people don't want them sent back, I put them in storage. I have 2 storage units that I pay $400 a month for, one of my costs, that are full of lead contaminated stuff that people have sent me or that I've collected at yard sales in different places, and that I've tested and reported on the website. And my goal with those objects is to create a traveling museum exhibit, traveling from science museum to science museum, where the exhibit shows how much of lead, cadmium, mercury, arsenic are in each of these items, and we engage children in the conversation in a new way, so that future generations are really fully on board before they become adults, where they're making decisions that are impacted by these concerns, so that they get the information really young. And I love that idea.
That is such a great idea, and it doesn't exist. That is oh, I know that's gonna come to fruition for you. That's huge.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to be presenting at the local museum, the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, as one of these. I've done this before, but not really formalized. I do presentations often and at universities, and I do health department sponsored presentations. I do presentations where doctors and nurses and educators get continuing education credits to come hear me speak. So that's fun. I like educating people, and I want to keep that going. But I really like the idea of doing this kind of site specific interactive exhibit about toxicants in our world in a way that's accessible to children and young people. And I like this idea of doing it as a museum exhibit. So this collaboration I'm going to be doing with OMSI coming up, and then hopefully maybe we can take it to the Exploratorium or something. I'd love to have it travel the country as a traveling museum exhibit.
That is so cool. Oh, I love it. Okay, where can everybody find you? Give us website, Instagram, TikTok, drop it all for us.
Yeah, it's all Lead Safe Mama at Lead Safe Mama. So I'm mostly on Instagram because I guess I have a following on TikTok, but I haven't made an effort there because I had a TikTok account that
Mhm.
had millions of views, and then someone reported me for nothing, like falsely, and it got deleted. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, if I can't appeal a deletion, I'm not going to put a lot of effort into there. So
Yeah.
um, I do have TikTok. I haven't uploaded there for a long time. I have YouTube now. The YouTube Lead Safe Mama YouTube channel is, I think, a really good resource that's underused. I have lots of videos showing me testing different items, talking about the toxicant profiles and the concerns with different items, and talking about different testing methodologies. And I think that's a really useful resource for people. So I'm hoping people will go there, but also primarily Instagram and Facebook. And I have a Facebook group that has over 30,000 people in it. You can join that group. It's a little bit overwhelming right now, but it's a resource, especially for families whose kiddos have tested positive or who themselves have tested positive for lead. And then the one thing I try and encourage people to do is to subscribe to the email newsletter that I have, because with the censorship that's happening on social media around health related things, if people subscribe to the newsletter, then they're going to get that information without any censorship and without needing it to meet the algorithm demands. So like this morning, I sent out the test results for the 5 items that I published today to the email newsletter first. And then over the course of the day, I'm sharing those on social media, trying to beat the
Okay.
algorithm to make sure people see them. So
That's so smart. Okay, so make sure to sign up for the newsletter because you'll get that
it's free.
information
It's
first.
free. And watch the film. The film, again, it's one of the buttons pinned at the top of the website menu and at the top of most of the articles on my website. And it's also available to watch for free. So I like people to watch that as a resource because it's a crash course and is very informative.
And I'll make sure to link that when I uh, position all this on social media.
Thanks.
Ma, thank you. You are an angel.